Um, then we have the statement of Shaykh Al-Albani, rahimahullahu ta'ala, and he says that, and this is just a general comment now on this passage, he says that which the Quran has indicated is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free of oppressing and wronging his servants, because At-Tahawi said يَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَهُوَ غَيْرُ ظَالِمٍ أَبَدًا. Allah does whatever he wills, but he is never oppressive. He is never oppressive. So Shaykh Al-Albani says, الَّذِي دَلَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنُ مِنْ تَنْزِيهِ اللَّهِ نَفْسِهِ عَنْ ظُلْمِ الْعِبَادِ يَقْتَدِي قَوْلًا وَسَطًا بَيْنَ قَوْلَيْ الْقَدْرِيَّةِ وَالْجَبْرِيَّةِ. So he says basically that which the Quran has indicated of the fact that Allah is never unjust to his servants, that he is free from being unjust to his servants, is something that necessitates that we have a balanced position between the position of the Qadariyya and the Jabariyya. And so therefore, the fact that something oppressive comes from the servants and something repugnant comes from the servants does not mean that this is dhulm on behalf of Allah and something repugnant on behalf of Allah. For example, to illustrate what is meant here, imagine one person murders another person. Imagine one person steals from another person. This now is dhulm. This is dhulm as it relates to the people, and it is something repugnant. But as something created by Allah and decreed by Allah to take place, this is not dhulm as it relates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Because this is what the Qadariyya say. This is basically the foundation of the doubt of the Qadariyya. How can Allah decree something, murder upon a servant, and stealing upon a servant, and gambling upon a servant, and fornication and adultery upon a servant, and then punish him for it when this is a repugnant action? This would be repugnant for Allah to do this. This would be oppression for Allah to do this. Therefore, Allah does not decree this. Allah does not create this. Rather, the servants do this themselves. Do you understand the reasoning here? Right? So, the answer being that just because an action is evil and repugnant as it relates to men, like murder to us is repugnant and evil, this does not, we can't make qiyas now. We can't make an analogy and say, well, because it's repugnant amongst the actions of men, therefore it is also repugnant in the actions of Allah, so therefore Allah cannot have created this action. This is the faulty reasoning of the Qadariyya. This is batil, this is false. Because Allah's actions cannot be likened to the actions of men. We can't make that qiyas. We can't make this tamthil. This is actually a tamthil between Allah and His creation. And it is like a false analogy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rabb. He is Al-Ghani, free when he need, Al-Qadir, the able. But the servants are the ones who are needy, fuqara and subdued. And so this is the first point the Shaykh mentions. And then he goes on to mention a second important point. And this is that the people who erred in Al-Qadr, those who are basically upon the view of the Ahlul Kalam, they say, what is the meaning of dhulm? The meaning of dhulm is, according to them, something which is impossible for Allah to do. Right? Meaning that dhulm is something that Allah is not able to do. It is impossible for Allah to commit dhulm. Now, is this correct? Is this correct?
For Allah to do.
Yeah.
Oppress.
Yeah. Is it possible for Allah to oppress His servants or not?
Possible for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. Because if you say it is impossible for Allah, Allah can, in His actions, Allah can. No, we know that Allah does not be unjust. But the issue here is possibility and impossibility. Do you understand? Yeah. Is it? They say it is impossible for Allah to be unjust, meaning that Allah cannot be unjust even if He wanted to. You know what I'm saying? In this case, how can it be a praise when Allah says, for example, there are many verses in the Quran when Allah says, وَمَا ظَلَمْنَاهُمْ, we did not oppress them. Or when Allah says, لَا ظُلْمَ الْيَوْمِ, there will be no oppression today, meaning on the Day of Judgment. Right? If Allah negates injustice from Himself, it has to be a praise. Now, if it's impossible for Allah to be unjust in the first place, how can that be a praise?
Yeah.
How can that be a praise? Do you understand?
So it's like they've given Allah like a deficiency.
Yeah. Well, really, it is a type of deficiency, yeah. Because they're removing something praiseworthy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is praised because He's not unjust. Allah is praised because He is not unjust. Right? Now, let me give you an example. Let me give you a crude example from the creation. To get the notion across. Now, imagine there a person who has no arms. A person has no arms. Now, can this person be praised for never stealing or taking something that didn't belong to him? Because he's not really able to do that, is he? He's not able to steal. He's not able to do with his hands what other people are able to do. So can we therefore now praise this person and say, mashallah, this person, he's never ever taken something with his hands which doesn't belong to him? This wouldn't be a praise for that person. It wouldn't be a praise for that person. So therefore, to say about Allah that it is impossible for him to commit dhulm, this is incorrect. Rather, if Allah wanted to, He could be oppressive to His servants. But because He is just and because He is not oppressive, He chooses not to. All right? And so here, Shaykh Al-Albani, he mentions some of the verses in the Quran indicating this. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِنَ الصَّالِحَاتِ وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَلَا يَخَافُ ظُلْمًا وَلَا حَضْمًا. Whoever works righteous deeds and is a believer, he does not need to fear any oppression. He will no need to fear any oppression or injustice, meaning that you will receive justice for your deeds. Likewise, ما يبدل القول لدي وما أنا بظلام للعبيد. The word will not be altered with me. I am not one who is oppressive to His servants. Likewise, statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَا ظَلَمْنَاهُمْ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا هُمُ الظَّالِمِينَ. We did not oppress them, but they are the ones who are the oppressors. And likewise, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَوَجَدُوا مَا عَمِلُوا حَادِرًا وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا. Everything they did, meaning all the actions they committed, they will find them present with them, in front of them. And your Lord does not oppress or wrong anybody. And likewise, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, الْيَوْمَ تُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ لَا ظُلْمَ الْيَوْمِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَرِيعُ الْحِسَابِ. This day will every soul be recompensed with what it did. There is no oppression today. Indeed, Allah is swift in reckoning. So, all of these verses invalidate this claim that it is impossible for Allah to be unjust. Rather, if Allah wanted to, He could be just. But because of His justice, His adl, and His, He chooses not to be just. And likewise, the Shaykh also mentions the hadith, Qudsi, Ya ibadi, inni haramtu dhulm ala nafsi. O my servants, I have prohibited oppression upon myself, and I made it unlawful amongst you. So do not oppress yourselves. The Shaykh says this indicates two things. Number one, that he prohibited dhulm upon himself. Something which is impossible, then you can't make it unlawful upon yourself. Do you understand? If it was impossible, how can you make it, in the first place, how can you make it unlawful upon yourself? Yeah? A person can't say, for example, I'm going to make it impossible upon myself. I'm going to make it unlawful upon myself, to fly. Well, you can't fly in the first place, so you can't make it impossible upon yourself. A person can't say, I'm going to make it impossible upon myself. I'm going to make it unlawful upon myself, I'm going to make it unlawful for myself to not take any water for 2 weeks. Well, you can't do that because you'll die. You can't make that impossible. You can't make that unlawful upon you. You can't make impossible things unlawful upon yourself. Right? So this is the angle of evidence that the Shaykh is bringing from this hadith. That this hadith shows that dhulm is, if Allah wanted to, he could commit dhulm. But he's made it unlawful upon himself. And secondly, he informed in this hadith Qudsi that he made dhulm unlawful upon himself, just in the same way that he made mercy, he prescribed it upon himself. Right? So he prescribed mercy upon himself, and he made oppression unlawful upon himself. Right? So this refutes their argument of saying that oppression is impossible upon Allah, because here Allah is likewise prescribing, making something, mercy, He's prescribing it upon Himself. And so they say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it is said to these people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who wrote and prescribed mercy upon Himself, and He's the one who made unlawful oppression upon Himself. And this is only because He is able. He's able to show mercy, which is why He prescribed it upon Himself. He's able to commit oppression, which is why He made it unlawful upon Himself. Right? So the same thing in both of those examples. He prescribed mercy because He's able to show mercy. So in other words, to argue and to say that it is impossible for Allah to commit oppression, then the meaning of this hadith would be that, well, Allah's made unlawful something which is impossible for Him to do anyway. Right? So the same meaning would apply to this hadith. The same argument would have to apply to this hadith. That Allah has ordered Himself with something which is impossible. Do you get it, yeah? Whereas we know that Allah is able to show mercy. Right? So the argument is false. The deduction is false. And finally, the statement of Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does whatever He wills of good. He decrees whatever He wills. Allah decrees whatever He wills of good and evil, and of reward and punishment. But He's never unjust. In all of this, He is never unjust to His servants, because He puts everything in its proper place. He puts reward, favor, success in its proper place for the one who deserves that. He makes success unlawful for the person who does not deserve that. Everything is in its proper place. He's never a zalim. He never oppresses anybody. So He never punishes the one who is obedient and righteous, nor does He reward the one who is disobedient. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect in His essence, in His names and attributes, and in His actions, in everything, and in His creation. In all of that, He is just and perfect in all of that. And finally, the Shaykh says, that Allah cannot be asked about what He does, because there's no imperfection in Allah's actions. Everything He does is hikmah, is wisdom. Everything falls in its proper place. Everything is in its proper place. But as for the servants, they are the ones who will be asked. Why? Because in the actions there is errors. There are errors. There are mistakes. There are things which are put in other than their proper places. So there is a difference between Allah and His actions and the actions of the servants. Allah will not be asked about His actions, but they will be asked about their actions. Allah's actions are wise, perfect, in their proper places. But the actions of the servants are not like that. And so in the actions of the servants, there are mistakes, errors, there is injustice, there is oppression, there is envy, arrogance, and so on and so forth, and all those things come into the service of the actions. But Allah's actions are unlike that. Allah's actions are wisdom and perfect, so He will not be asked, but their actions, they will be asked about their actions. So this is the end of this commentary on this passage of Imam al-Tahawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. We're going to stay with this passage yet still in the next lesson with commentary from Sheikh Zayd al-Madkhali, which again will round up the many issues that we've discussed already, and that will then lead us inshallah ta'ala to a more detailed discussion in the speech of Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh. And with that we conclude our lesson there today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.